Who was the guy who started? I saw him on.
Okay, all right, here we go. We are recording our podcast of teachers. Hopefully this will stand up. Maybe it won't.
And
Maybe pass it around as you're talking. How's that sound?
that's scary.
So that it can't receive from the middle.
I don't know if I can get it to stand up.
Probably have to
How
hold
about
it.
leaning against something?
Let me move this.
Like,
the iced tea.
You might want to take notes too, so.
Yeah,
Oh,
really,
that's
I'm
okay.
really bad at taking dictation, so I'm hoping with this, just speak loud. Project.
Green Dot Public Schools is a network of public charter schools in Los Angeles, California, Memphis, Tennessee, and Washington State. They say that their middle schools offer grades 6 to 8 and the high schools offer grades 9 to 12. Their schools are free and open to all students like other public schools. I don't think that that's true. I think that Green Dot was a charter school, okay, and it's not a public school. I think it was a private school, but I'm not sure, okay? What happened to our school was that they built another school just about a mile down the road. You could even see
I could see
the
it from my
rooftops, you know.
I could see it from my room.
And what they did was they cherry-picked our kids. And we have a population of 4,000, and all, the gate people, they took all of our gate kids, and they took them all the way over there. Gifted and talented.
Right.
Yeah, the gifted and talented, right. And so our gifted program diminished, and we did not have the results of these, kids when they would take the test, to see how great they were. I mean, in view of the school. So what did they leave us with? We had about 300 to 400 students that were designated as a special ed, a variety of, okay, in special ed. And those kids had to take the same tests as our gate kids, our regular kids, and so our scores went down.
Right.
so that happens everywhere. The students in special ed have to take those tests.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't think they should be taking them.
Well, that has nothing to do though
No.
with the
But they did.
but that's part of separating these kids and having charter so that they can say that our charter schools, look how great they are.
Yeah.
They are producing wonderful kids. Their scores are so high, and we are looking like, okay, so now where do we go from here?
That never happened that first year. They came and cherry picked the kids, and some kids went, some kids didn't go, as I recall. And at the end of the year, when they had the tests and everything, Bell High School came out better than the charter school, better than the one that they had put all the good kids in.
Well, or the same anyway. Well, this is Wikipedia, and it says that the founder was Steve Barr, that it was founded in 1999, and the schools that Green Dot operates are named Animo, the Spanish word for rigor and strength. The graduation rates of schools operated by Green Dot are higher than those of the LA Unified School District. In the 2014-15 school year, 80% of those students graduated from Animo schools compared to 72% that year for LAUSD, 79.7% for comprehensive high schools. In 2006, Green Dot opened 5 charter schools within the attendance area of LA's troubled Locke High School, and a majority of the permanent teachers at Locke High School voted to reconstitute the underperforming school as a Green Dot charter school. Which had a lot of consequences, yeah.
Okay. Green Dot Schools, few things to say about it. One is that the Via Ragosa who was the mayor of Los Angeles. Right away, he aligned himself with Green Dot, and he became mayor. And I'm just going to say he did not remotely get anywhere close to becoming governor in the primaries.
Right.
And I felt it was because of his connection
Aligning.
to Green Dot, but hard to say.
Yeah.
I know someone whose mother is an LAUSD administrator, now retired, and her son, when he graduated from college, he decided to be a teacher with Green Dot, let's say 10 years ago, because he said, as a starting teacher, you get paid a lot better in Green Dot. So he was in Green Dot for probably 10 years. And recently he left and he's now working for Los Angeles Unified School District. And I think it's more that he got an interesting position with LAUSD. But that was one thing that I found intriguing, is when you're a new teacher, you don't care necessarily about the benefits that you might be getting when you retire. You care about being able to make some money now. So that was appealing to him.
Okay, well.
Aren't most, now, not all charter schools are Green Dot, number
No,
one.
no.
Right.
But I thought, from what I understood, there are some charter schools that actually have benefits because you're sort of
There are-
loosely connected to the state or to LA. But a lot of teachers, when they go in to be a charter school teachers, they're a new teacher every year because they don't have any seniority, they don't have any tenure, and I think they don't have half the benefits that a regular teacher.
My niece yesterday was telling me that if the charter school is coordinated with or supported by a unified school district, then they would have better support, they would have better benefits as a teacher. But if they are independent, an independent charter school, then all teachers get same pay. Doesn't matter if you've been teaching 15 or 15 days or 15 years. Okay, so you do not get any seniority. There's no seniority. There's a lot of paperwork involved because you don't have the staff, to support them with, and I don't think they have the discipline either. Where they have that. My daughter was telling me that, and this is at Belmont. No, was it not Belmont? This was at Roybal. Excuse me. At Roybal, okay, where they have multi-levels schools there. That one of the top floors was designated as charter schools. Okay, and she said those kids in the charter schools were hell on wheels. They would go up and down the staircase like it was nobody's business. They would take their trash cans and dump them down the stairs, and they would go into other teachers. And this had happened to my daughter. She said I had my door opened just to get some fresh air, and they threw trash cans inside my room, and you have no recourse. When she says, "Well, I told the administrator there." They didn't do anything. There was no recourse at all. So as far as a discipline and support, discipline for the kids and support for the teachers, there wasn't anything to speak of. And so this was, Laura there at Roybal, yeah, as she was telling us. But my niece was working for, just recently, just this last year, was working for an independent charter school, and I think was Learning for Life. And so she said the places where you go were the areas where kids are very poor. There's a great need for them. She says, but that's not the real problem. it's the problem that you don't get any support from the teachers.
Do they charge tuition at Learning for Life?
You know what? That I didn't ask,
Okay.
and so I don't know.
If it's a
They do.
charter school, then
Yeah.
they won't, independent or dependent. One of the places that I worked at that had, it was a middle school, grade 6 through 8, public school, LAUSD, and they had a charter on the same campus. It was elementary school, and it's a German immersion program. So here we are on a campus that is mostly kids who are Black, Hispanic, and then there's this little school with they used to call them the little blonde ones because most of them were blonde.
Yeah.
Anyways, so the idea was, well, we're not thrilled about having this charter on our campus, but at least they're elementary, so they're not competing with the numbers we need. They were there probably about 2 years, and then they started, and they got along. The kids had a separate lunch, they had a separate area that they played. But then I think after the second year, they started saying, we need more room. And this is something I hear about with other charter schools. They come on, they're really sweet and nice, and then after about 2 years, they start saying, well, we need more room. And what happens at that point is that, you may all know this, but any room that does not have, a roster carrying teacher in that room, then that's up for grabs. So that's the library, the computer room, if they have a science room, anything that makes that campus good, then they can look and say, we want it.
And this is because of the school choice proposition?
I believe.
Space.
I know that it's part of the law. So but the thing is that what I've seen in the school I was at, so rather than be anecdotal, I really saw this happen. And our school, our community of people that believed in public education, fought it, went to the school board. The charters are incredible what they do for parents to mobilize and come to the school board as well. They actually, at the time, they didn't get their request for more room. It was denied by the board because when they showed their proposal of who they were gonna be seeking out, what areas they were gonna be recruiting from for kids, they neglected to include the what do we call it, the projects. A housing project that is right down the street from the school. So it was like you're not recruiting equally. Okay. All right. And there's a few other things that I wanted to say of what I saw at that particular middle school that I was at. We would have, school starts on a certain date, and then there's what's called norm day, where they figure out how many students you have. That determines how many teachers you have, and other services. So the charter school down the street, and this particular one, it was part of ICEF, ICEF. And there was one of them that was located at a church within, say, a mile of our school. So ICEF would have their kids, and then towards springtime, before state mandated testing, suddenly we'd see kids trickling in as new students, just before testing. So these were the kids that were not performing well. Maybe they had, who knows, could have been attitude, but
Yeah.
not performing well, and they would just say, nope, you're out. And then they'd come to our middle school. So I've talked about that occasionally to a few UTLA staff, and they said, this is sort of like, it's the thing that neither the charters or LAUSD want to talk about, or really say, look, there would be a way, if somebody was asked, it's very easy to say, look, here's the records that show our admissions and our transfers and when they occurred and how many, where they came from. But it's like it just wasn't being done. But what I will say was that at least on my particular campus, we had elementary, not middle school, so we didn't have the same age. Principal told me there were few benefits to having those kids on the campus, because when you looked at how many students there were to budget things like custodial help and cafeteria workers, those kids counted towards having more cafeteria staff and having a full-time plant manager rather than a part-time plant manager. So
there was a benefit.
So that was
for
the benefit.
that was the benefit, but
Tacit
then,
agreement.
Their
to
school
just-
scores probably weren't so great.
Well, but they can,
But it didn't matter because they weren't
Yeah.
competing grade-wise.
Yeah, but they still had a low school
So, you're
score
here?
compared to somebody else that didn't
Yeah.
get those kids, probably.
after that, I was at that middle school for 3 years. So, third year, Dees, what was his name? Daisy.
DC.
Daisy. So then Daisy started
Mr.
proposing.
Popular. Mr. Popular.
Yeah.
Mr. Popular started proposing that there's a Chinese immersion program in Venice, like it's the star of what LAUSD does, and they were talking about moving the program because they wanted to expand. So then they were talking about, they tried it at one school, that school refused, so then they tried it at my middle school, which the name was Marina Del Rey Middle School. So Goethe, the German immersion program, was gonna leave, I guess, and Daisy was saying to us, but isn't this better because at least it's an LAUSD program, not, a charter, except that they were gonna need more room. And they literally, for the German immersion program, they had actually taken a cut of the field that the middle school kids use. So they were saying, well, we're gonna need, a little more room for them. And we were asking if this Chinese immersion could also benefit kids in the middle school, or the kids from that program could then go to our middle school and continue this Chinese immersion. It was sounded like that wasn't gonna happen. Problem is, I'm not sure that the Chinese immersion program got there, but there was a huge fight. And it's like, we're gonna take away something you don't like, we're gonna give you something that in some ways is better, but there's conditions. So, I'll leave it at that for the moment.
So I have a question for the group, because you all have a lot of experience as teachers, and obviously I don't. So over the last 3 decades, how has legislation changed in regards to how schools are funded and measured against test performance?
More testing.
Yeah.
Isn't that the bottom line? More testing?
Well, the fact that the testing started looking at teacher effectiveness specifically, I was at, like I said, I've been all over LAUSD. I've been in areas where very high performing elementary schools in, say, the Brentwood area. And when they're measuring teacher effectiveness, it's really a challenge because all of the teachers have pretty high performing students, but they don't have any special day classes for special ed students. The parents didn't want it. So you have kids who are moderate, I'm going to say moderate, at least moderate, autistic students. You've got, students with some serious issues who are also in those classrooms. But if you have all high-performing classes, basically, then someone still comes out looking bad using that measure of teacher effectiveness, even though overall, compared to the rest of the district, the class is really good. Does that make sense?
Yes, when was that implemented, that they started measuring teacher effectiveness?
I don't think so.
working.
I think it was after I left.
I think it was talked about even before.
Yeah.
This was something that was usually talked about in schools, and so our school is quite a mix. We had some really high-ended students that were, very good, performed really great, and then on the other one we had the bottom, the very needy, the special ed, and a lot of people were in the middle there. And so some teachers said, well, yeah, bring it on. Well, bring it on, it doesn't help those teachers that are teaching remedial classes. And of course, you're not labeling them as remedial because that's against the law. How is a teacher going to fix the problem of having 35 students, even 30, let's say,
More like
in a
40.
classroom? Well, let's just simply be saying, let's say 30, 35 students in the class, and you have 10 of them that are extremely needy, special ed, or whatever, in the variety of problems that they might have. You can't fix that. And one student, like I had a student in my classroom, and I said, well, you know what, if you don't do this, this and that, or whatever it was that I wanted him to do, do your homework, come to class on time, or whatever, I'm going to call your mother, I'm going to have your parents come over for a parent conference. And so the administration looked at me when I said that, and they laughed. And they said, well, why are you laughing at this? Well, because we have tried that. The parents won't come to the school. So now, how is the teacher going to teach this particular student when you don't have the administrator's support or the parents' support?
Right.
I was going to say, you're
How are you
about to
gonna
lose
fix
your
it? You might,
umbrella.
yeah.
Keep talking, I'll fix the umbrella.
I'm going to get a cookie.
Keep talking.
Keep talking,
Did you get some food?
Yeah.
Sure?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
you did? Okay.
I'm going to have a cookie.
Well, and then there's the issue of, kindergarten doesn't test, so that's not an even thing then among teachers. Not, and first grade I don't think counts those test scores. So they're kind of out of the picture too, those teachers.
How about the pre-K? You were a pre-K
Oh, right,
teacher.
pre-K. Well, but they went to a state model then after that. But you're right, when the full credential teachers are teaching it, yeah, how were they going to be measured against test scores? They weren't,
I'm curious,
so it wasn't fair.
I just want to ask, does anybody know, are charter school teachers required to be credentialed?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I
Does anybody
know that
I have
Catholic
heard
school
that they
teachers
don't.
did not used to be, but I believe they are now. And
My understanding is that they do not consistently have to be credentialed. And there was a candidate running for governor who was calling for a moratorium on all new charter schools because charter schools are not held to the same standards and laws as public schools. So I don't think it's universal that they would have to do that, and they don't all have to have unions. It's optional.
Right, and that's one thing that UTLA is trying to do, is to get into the charter schools, the independent charters, and at least get them to buy into the union. Well, what else about charters as far as legislation? When there was a period where LAUSD was building a whole bunch of new schools. And when it came time to open those schools, problem is I don't know how many, but the charter schools said we're supposed to have, places, and some of those schools that were brand new, instead of going to LAUSD schools, they went to the independent charters.
Mhm.
So another issue then is that at least some of the schools that charters are in require less maintenance, where, because they were new, whereas LAUSD, I've been in schools that have a whole range of issues because they're old and the district, it says it doesn't have the money to do some of the repairs that are needed.
And we were in year round, so there wasn't a time when there wasn't 2/3 of all your kids there.
There wasn't.
So they didn't do any maintenance, I don't think. I guess something fell off.
Or very little.
But the constant problem with the rats and the cockroaches and all of that was just horrible.
okay, it says here California Education Code, section 47605 states that teachers in charter schools are required to hold a California Commission on Teacher Credentialing Certificate, permit, or other document equivalent to that which a teacher in other public schools would be required to hold in core academic subjects or college, probably college classes.
I'm not sure if the charter schools have the same mandated curriculum that public schools have. I want to infer that they do not.
I've also heard that they are not held accountable to the test scores.
All
In the
right, so
same
then
way.
they do not do the testing that public schools do. Because every spring for at least 8 to 10 years, all you did was test.
Mhm.
There was a test, it was for everything. What was it? They had to test for the cells, they had to test for the gate, they tested for what used to be called the Casey, which is not anymore.
Star testing.
There was all kinds of testing. And so you did not have time to do any teaching. And I don't know if the charter schools were held to the same, criteria. The other thing is, public schools, because they're public schools, cannot turn away any student. They need to accept it, no matter what. And like you said, that's why those kids from the middle school came to the public school at that particular time of the year, because public schools couldn't say, go away, or go somewhere else, or don't come, come back here. They can't say that. It's open to the public. That's why it's public schools. Charter schools can, and they do, and they have criteria for who is going to enter this. Whatever criteria that they set up, which whatever it is, high performance of one area or another, or public schools don't have that. Like, for instance, Catholic schools have don't really accept special ed students, because the Catholic schools do not have the expertise or the time, to deal with those students. So where do they go? Public schools.
So
There used to be a school, Whitney High School, which was for Whitney.
yeah,
It used to
Okay.
be for special ed students,
okay, and a lot's changed.
and they disbanded that.
No, it still exists.
It doesn't.
Um,
Is that the hearing impaired one?
No,
Oh,
and
okay.
I actually, for the last year, have been working in a special ed center, the
Okay.
one for the hearing, for the deaf, and the hard of hearing, Marlton, so, good afternoon. So one of the things that's going on, and if I were to talk to you about what's going on with the deaf education, because that I really know about right now, and that's been in the news lately. Okay, first thing is that you have the special ed center, and I'll use Marlton as the one for the deaf. When kids enter there, they can start in pre-K, and they can go all the way up until they're 22 years old. And there are kids there that are 22 years old, but they're losing numbers there, because one reason would be because when you turn 18, there are all these what they call CTC programs around that are for the 18 to 22-year-old kids to, they perhaps to some extent to help them with, like life skills and what they're going to do once school is over. They're located, Whitney is now completely a CTC as of about 3-4 years ago.
And what's a CTC?
I am not totally sure. That's something your researcher can look up.
Oh, thank you, fact checker.
Yeah.
Okay, fact checker.
But I do have one thing here. A divided mind, charter schools versus public schools, social solutions, that's the article title. It says, while charter schools are held to the same state academic standards as public schools, they have the flexibility to define their own curriculum. Charter schools often serve a specific student population or have specific curriculum goals and tend to offer fewer electives than traditional public schools. So what did you want me to look
Oh,
up?
and we're making
Oh,
sure.
CTC. If you were to look up Whitney, WIDNEY, that'll explain what it is. So, Whitney has a big program. They've done it, they're doing it at various high schools in the area. I've heard about, I think Fairfax High School, Venice High School, so various ones. So that is a good thing. It changes the numbers in the special ed centers. But I just wanted to say that Whitney is no longer, I had been at Whitney, like one summer I was there a few days, and it's not like that anymore.
They don't define it either. It says Whitney CPTC envisions building a future for students dedicated to lifelong learning and maximizing independence. Students will engage in meaningful work and transition activities within an an inclusive environment in preparation for becoming active members of society by applying the skills needed to access their community.
And the kids that go to those programs, there are kids where they are not functional enough. Either, they have emotional issues where they're just, they can't be there, or cognitively it's not appropriate. Or I guess it's also up to the parents to decide that they think.
But, and this is a part of the problem too, because parents can decide that they want their child, whether the child, we used to call them the EHs, emotionally handicapped student. I'm not too sure exactly the whole, the whole umbrella where, the kids were there. Or the, where it stopped, they have to be mainstreamed into the school, mainstreamed into the regular classroom, which I do not think that the charter schools have. And the other thing is that in the public schools, you have now this core curriculum. And everybody in the downtown has made up a core curriculum of some type. There's a national core curriculum, there is a state one, there is a municipal, there's a city one, and it's like, okay, which one do you want me to teach? Okay, and then you have to be tested at the end. So you have a core curriculum, and it's all page by page. Today we're going to do this, today we're going to do that. It's all prescribed, what it is that you're going to be teaching. And so it does not leave the classroom teacher any creativity to do that. The charter schools don't have to do that.
And I don't think, that's new, right? I mean, you didn't have to do that before.
That's been,
We've
be
had
10
standards
years or more.
because they had preschool standards, they had standards for grades kinder through probably through high school when I was teaching for the arts, for math, for science, for social studies, for English language learners. I did find CTPC. It is Certified Professional Technical Communicator. That's what that stands for. It is designed to validate the skills, knowledge, and competence of technical communicators as they advance in their professional careers.
Are we sure that's
Because I've always heard it called CTC.
Okay.
So that's what.
Yeah, because I mean, that acronym might apply to something completely different.
I don't know, communication.
Also, the sources that you're looking at, are these specific to California? Because our
That doesn't say.
conversation's all about California right now.
What you're saying about the core curriculums where you're supposed to be on this page on this day, what my understanding had been is that for kids who move around, that the benefit of that, all I'm saying is the theory is that if they move from Magnolia Elementary School and go to Mar Vista Elementary School, that they will be able to be right on track with what that class is doing. That's
That's-
supposed to be theoretically.
Theoretically,
Why?
it doesn't really work that way.
But, yeah, I see, it's so restrictive. All I can tell you is that at the school I was at most recently, and again, it's a school for the deaf, but there are community kids there. I was saying, they have a garden. It's sitting there just dead. The teachers I was thinking about how much I enjoyed as a kid, even if all we did was take a lima bean and stick it in a thing of water and then
Right.
watch the lima bean grow, or a sweet potato, whatever. It's like the teachers don't have time for that anymore, you know? So it's an option, they could do it, but it's sort of like everybody's just trying to teach to
the test.
those standards. So, like I said, one of the things that I remember that I enjoyed, you know, kindergarten, we grew radishes, which unfortunately I hate radishes,
Yeah.
but I mean, you know, just those little things.
Right. And also in the public schools,
Maybe
you need to
can find
have
it.
your
So,
standards
I have.
quite visible on the board, on the wall, somewhere, to be changed daily according to your lesson plan. I don't know if that's done in charter schools.
So the testing, the whole testing thing, did that start with No Child Left Behind?
Yes.
Did it? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Career and Transition Centers,
That's-
CTC.
That's what a CTC is.
That sounds more applicable to a school.
Now, I was going to say, if I can talk about the School for the Deaf, just to give you an indication of, they, at one point, from my understanding, were completely deaf and hard of hearing. And there was a time when the district, basically any kid that was deaf was sent to that school, so anywhere in LAUSD. And I want to stress, I was only there for the last year. Okay, so I'm hearing what used to be. And what's going on now is that parents have the option to have their kid in their school of
Choice?
school, no,
Residents.
in school of residence with a teacher's aide with them, and an interpreter, interpreter, ASL interpreter, to basically communicate to them what the teacher is saying. So there's benefits because the kid is in their, they're not traveling by bus a long distance.
Mm-hmm.
But the negatives are that that child is not socializing with other kids who are deaf. And, you know, the deaf community has opinions about that, that there's a loss there. They also feel that these interpreters, basically the kid is being taught by the interpreter, not by the teacher. So they're missing out there, and if the interpreter is absent, the district may or may not have another person to send. So, but the teachers at my school, they felt the district is encouraging that, of having an interpreter with the child in their home school, because it's cheaper. Now, whether educationally it's
really-
better.
No, they get money, okay, they get the daily allowance for, what's it called, for each student.
Okay, well, so then there's some advantage to the district that may not be an advantage to the kid. Meanwhile, Marlton is the only school for the deaf, and they're losing, their population is way down. And they are taking community kids, which, you know, on the one hand I see as a good thing. So, meaning that the siblings of a child who's deaf or hard of hearing, the siblings, if they are in elementary school, can go to Marlton. So it's convenient for the parent. They're going to the same school. The kids are being exposed to
More deaf children.
well, they're being exposed to American Sign Language. And then but when they go to middle school, then they have to go to another school. The ones who are hearing. then the other thing is that kids who live in the community, instead of going to their neighborhood school, they can get permission to go to the school for the deaf. So this change is causing the school to somewhat be dependent on the kids who are not deaf to keep, to be able to get services. You know, like they're like, yeah. So like there was one counselor who's deaf and she was told, and I happened to be there when she was told this by the principal, that they needed the hearing kids because that was partially what paid for that person's job as a position as a counselor. And they were talking about doing something, maybe creating a magnet program for hearing kids to be able to come to Marlton and learn ASL as, say, like a foreign language. But there is a huge battle going on right now, and it's been in the news in the last, let's say, month, about the feelings of the deaf staff at the school, that the focus is being taken away from the deaf kids, and but part of this is perhaps because of all these changes in the laws about what's offered.
Mainstreaming.
Well, and it's a challenge because the part that I see, think about when we were growing up, because all of us were growing up and going to school before there was mainstreaming. So the only time we saw kids that were disabled were, at least for me, when occasionally out on the street, but generally when they would have these programs at the Shrine Auditorium for I don't know if you're LAUSD kids, but once a year the Shrine Auditorium, maybe they'd be putting on a performance of Cinderella or Magic Flute, and all of LAUSD got to go. And I would see kids in wheelchairs with helmets on, and it's like, what is that? That's the only time I saw them. And they might even be on my campus, but I didn't know it. So anyways, I like the idea that kids who are able-bodied get to be exposed to people that are not as able-bodied, so that they have perhaps more compassion and understanding. That part I like. Mm-hmm. So I just want to throw out that it's not all a bad idea, except that there are kids who, the parents make the decision about what's best for the child. And sometimes the parents may be making a decision that isn't necessarily the best for the child, so you say the kids who are deaf who are in a mainstream class, when maybe the kid would prefer to be in the school for the deaf and actually socialize with other kids that are deaf.
Now tell me, would a deaf child be accepted into a charter school?
That would be very interesting. I haven't heard anything about that.
Or a special?
My understanding is that some of the charters are special education charters.
Are they?
Really? I've never heard that before.
No. I've not heard of that.
Okay, but when they say that,
Complete, background, lack of background, when you get to be 97 years old, everything I've done has been long, long time ago. When did the charter schools make their appearance as an opposition almost to public schools? And was it, do you think, or have you an opinion on, is it another example of, I can make some money. I can make some money by getting into this and competing with the with the institution that founded our country, public education was the founding of this country. And so I had 2 questions there about when did they make their appearance, and was there ever any discussion about, oh, now somebody wants to make some money off of something, which should be
People
a
have been
privilege
saying that
and
from the
Free.
beginning.
We know that people, it's a business.
Yeah.
They're, what they're
And
touting.
when was it that the charters made their
Since
appearance? Can you
2000.
think?
Oh, earlier.
The
Oh,
first,
that way.
the first attempt to get charter schools into California was in the 90s. I want to say it was 94-ish.
Yeah,
And
because
the
I'm
first
thinking it was
attempt
around
failed,
when we
but it-
did learn.
The first attempt at legislation, of putting the legislation forward did fail, but they did get it through pretty shortly after that. And once it was on the books, then I think the biggest move was Antonio Villaraigosa.
And that was about when?
When he was.
2000.
When he was mayor,
2000 what?
Well,
Yeah, I think I was already in Virginia at the time, so it was probably around 2006.
I
2006.
and it's kind of interesting because we know that one of the former UTLA presidents, when he retired from UTLA, he left and was then the head of a charter school, which
Oh, he
was, do you remember?
he was, he was mayor from 2005 to 2013. Which
And
one?
when he became
Dave
mayor,
Ritchie?
he fought really hard to get his charter schools.
It's
and
the
he
guy
got
that
like
always
a
wore the
dozen of them, right?
shorts and
Duffy?
Duffy.
Oh, I
Duffy.
did not know that.
Yes. So think about this. We had a person who was totally like pro-union, you know,
He was the
Duffy,
president,
A.J.
yeah.
Duffy, wasn't it A.J.
Yeah.
Duffy?
His
And then
name
he
was on our
leaves
retirement
and
book.
there's this opportunity and he's over a charter school. But the whole premise of the charter schools that I had heard from people was, but we can provide education with less expense. We can provide the same or better, basically, and it's going to cost less. And people go, "Oh, that sounds great," except that I'm the lone school nurse here, and I know that if you have an independent charter, they don't have to have a school nurse, they don't have to have a school psychologist. There's services that they don't have to have. I know that at Pacific Palisades Charter High School, which used to be an LAUSD school, they actually have 2 school nurses, one who's really like a credentialed school nurse and one who does first aid. So that's like a benefit
Here's
of
the article on Duffy.
being a charter, that they can choose to do that. Have 2 nurses. An LAUSD schools typically wouldn't do that. But typically, kids who go to independent charters or who go to private schools, if that child needs an IEP, then they have to go to their home school, their home LAUSD school, to get the assessment done, which requires a school psychologist, it requires, a whole bunch of testing.
So basically, okay, so I'm a parent of an IEP student. Granted, he's not in school anymore.
Okay.
Because they don't have a school psychologist, would my son have been rejected from attending school there?
The school that, at that charter school or whatever?
At a charter school, yeah.
Sometimes the parent may decide that actually the local public school can provide better services for the child. I have to tell you honestly, there have been times when rare, but it has happened where me as a school nurse, part of my thing is to make sure that the child gets a hearing test and a vision test. And there's been a few times where it's like, your kid needs glasses, or there's, some other health issue that if they'd been going to a school that had a school nurse that was mandated to do hearing tests and vision tests, they would have discovered that a long time before. But I want to add the other thing, that being in the West LA side is like you see different things than you see in other parts of the city. So one of the other things that we would see is kids who are enrolled in private schools, and it could be expensive private schools and Catholic schools. And the parents, basically what they're trying to do is convince the district that their child is getting services in the school that they're at that LAUSD cannot provide, so that they can get LAUSD school district to pay for their child's education at the private school or at the Catholic
Very
school.
popular.
Huh?
That's a very popular move.
And so I saw that a lot when I moved into the west side. You have kids that are going to, it could be a religious school again, it could be a Hebrew school, it could be Catholic. There was one kid who was diagnosed autistic, and he was going to Catholic school, and his mother was saying, but only they can help him. And it was kind of like, really, what is a Catholic school going to do for this kid? But that's what she was
Hoping that
fighting
then the
for.
district would pay for this tuition.
Right, and there was one mom, I mean, I'm sorry to throw this in, but there was one mom who, I guess her husband was saying, we really can't afford this private school anymore. But she was determined that he was going to stay in the private school. And she inadvertently said to one of the special ed resource people that if the district wasn't going to pay for this, then she might have to go to work. And so I mean, this is something that is interesting. I have seen people parents who maybe the wife doesn't have to work, but she will do whatever it takes for her kid to get, whatever the education is, like work. And then there are, parents again who are saying, I can't work, I have to drive my kid to, private school, and I have to, so there's been some interesting things. And I just wanted to throw that in there, that that's another
area.
issue.
Right.
And
Do charter schools have the facilities for to test students that have needs, special needs? I have a feeling that they don't.
what, like what, are you talking about a resource teacher and all that?
Yes, a resource teacher.
They
do not-
send them
to
either, what, I think, and you may know more than me on this, but you can probably go and pay a psychologist to do the testing, but because you are a taxpayer, you can get it through your local district.
Didn't the,
Sometimes you can, sometimes you cannot. This was years back, and one of the students needed, one of the children needed some special testing, and the school
For
did
what?
not have it.
For what?
Whatever, it was the student was not performing, and so the teacher said, "This kid needs special testing. We don't have it here. Go to your public school." Well, you go to the public school, and they said, we can't give that to you because your child here is not enrolled in the public school. If your child was enrolled in this public school, then we could. We could do the testing or what do we need to
Okay,
do.
how long ago was that?
It was many years ago.
Okay.
This
Well,
was
I-
many, you
I
know,
can share-
so I don't know. But the point is not who can and who cannot. If we're talking about charter schools, do charter schools provide special testing?
Okay, well, one of the things I want to say that I find interesting about charter schools is when the issue comes up about special ed, there are charter schools that will say, yeah, you know, or I'll hear something about, yeah, my child, has an IEP and they're going to a charter school. Well, then my question is, specifically, what is it that your child gets through that IEP? What is the eligibility that that school was willing to accept them? If the IEP is for speech versus if the IEP is for a kid who has multiple handicaps, you know, just saying special ed is
Right.
like a huge
Yeah, it's a big
umbrella.
umbrella, yeah.
And, you know, so again, and there are people who think their child may have a special need and they won't even bother to check with, say, a magnet program because they just assume magnet programs don't take kids that have IEPs, which is wrong.
Right.
But speaking in the last, say,
Thank you.
Yeah.
prior to being the 1 year at the School for the Deaf, I was at Paul Revere Middle School in LAUSD, and that's like a highly desirable middle school in the Palisades Brentwood area. And so when I speak about the kids with the private schools, that's even a year ago. You know, it's a little mop. A little ghost. You are adorable. But charter schools, I can't totally say. I just have a question about that. For any one of them that says, yeah, we do take kids with special needs. I want to know, like,
What are the needs?
yeah.
Didn't the charter schools come about, I forget what era that was, it sort of reminds me of Reagan era and all that stuff, when they were talking about every problem in the school is because of the teacher. And that's because the teacher's been there so long, they do what they want, we can't corral them in. So I thought the concept was we're going to have a special school where there's no unions for the teachers, they do bad stuff, we fire them. And I thought that was the whole concept between, about this.
It probably.
That's probably where it started.
That's part of it. Part of it is that business CEOs wanted to
Run it like a business.
Well, it's a
run it like a
union
business,
thing.
but they wanted to control the curriculum so that they would have people to feed into their business with specific skills. The other thing was that you hear all the time is that the unions protect bad teachers.
That's not
And
true.
Well,
yeah,
protect
but let's
teachers.
put that right to bed, because there are the union protects their
The right to due process, right?
their right to due process, absolutely, and that's it. If the principals are on the ball
There's the point.
and can watch these people and supervise them, then all they have to do is document it. And I think they have one other chance, if I'm not mistaken. And then if they screw up that chance, then they're out.
And then they also have some kind of program. I met someone who, she was a teacher, maybe she was
Well, they have that
retired working
mentor.
part-time. It's like, so the teacher, there's issues with the teacher. And so
Retrain
then they
them.
have that mentor person,
Right.
which they may be resentful towards or they may be grateful for. Kind of hard to say. But there's also And I've seen it on occasion where you have the teacher who is of retirement age and really is being genuinely ineffective. And I'm talking about the one, and they just basically are,
Marking time.
but they can retire. They can retire anytime they want to.
Oh.
I don't know if there was one at Magnolia who basically, she just, like, other than school, she didn't have much of a life. There's someone I'm picturing. There was a teacher at.
But she was very effective.
Okay,
Yeah,
she was
she kept
effective.
coming back.
But there was one where the principal, I think he was a new principal, and he really was, he got her out, where she was teaching, it was a special needs class, and this teacher unfortunately had arthritis so bad that she could barely, she walked like a robot, just very stiff, very slow, and was very rigid about, like very inflexible as far as, come on, your kids are in the special needs class. The teachers, you get your lunch break at a certain time, and it's like, no, she would just leave to go take her break because it was break time. But there was something going on, and in her case with her kids, she could have been more flexible. And anyways, there were many reasons. She was like really bad news in all ways of things
But
you
he
would
did
want.
his job.
He did his
documented.
job.
Yes.
He definitely did his job.
And I'm sure the union rep was not trying to protect this person.
So I have a question about just the very basic difference between a public school and a charter school. Is it correct to say that organizationally the difference is that a public school has administration that's paid for by the state, whereas a charter school has a board?
Because you can have public, you can have dependent charter schools and independent charter schools. And more in LAUSD, you have schools that are completely part of LAUSD, but they are considered to be a charter school. There's more flexibility in how they spend their money, or they get extra money for being a charter school, but they get all of the services that LAUSD gets as far as school nurse, school psychologist,
And also retirement and all that kind
retirement,
of stuff.
union,
And union protection.
the to some extent, I don't want to say to some extent the curriculum, but the charters can.
And they do not have a board of directors?
That's right, they do not.
So how does that work? How are they even a charter school at that point?
Well, they can tailor their curriculum, whereas a regular LAUSD school has to follow the district curriculum.
So basically the only difference in that case is that they are outside of the stringent regulations of a regular public school.
No, one
Not
school.
even all of that, because
What-
I'm sure they still have to test.
Right, they do. There was one school, the range of what I've seen, there was one charter school that's in the South LA area, Crenshaw area, and one of the things was they got extra money through Nestle Corporation. And so, which meant they sold a lot of chocolates. And one time,
So a charter can have corporate sponsors.
and I think any school, if they can find, Magnolia had, like we had, who was it?
I don't remember, but we did have some.
There was some. There was an actress that came and was involved, adopted the school, Diane.
Yeah.
Well, we
I can't
had,
think of her
at,
last name.
at our high school, I believe that we could write for a grant, and as a matter of fact, we had a team of teachers, a small team, and there would be a huge grant from one of the companies, whatever company it was, and they would write that, for that grant. And every time that we would get a grant and it was not from a company, the company always had some strings attached to it.
And
Whatever
what would the strings be?
I'm not sure exactly the details.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's who it
okay.
is.
And
Diane Keaton.
so
Diane Keaton
Yeah.
adopted, that was pretty cool. She's like about that tall. Anyways, well, no, taller than that. But, okay, Playa Vista. I don't know if you know what Playa Vista is. In the west side, sort of around Westchester,
Okay.
Marina del Rey, in the wetlands, there's this, and Playa Vista exists now, but it was going to be a huge, several blocks of apartments, condos, townhomes, and the idea is supposed to be that they'd be like a little grocery store, restaurant, like park-like atmosphere. You could almost live and work there and never leave because it would just be so great. So there was a lot of resistance to it, and while they were still in the formation phases, they were donating money to various local schools. That's one way to get people to say, oh, okay, well, my child's benefiting from this, so I'm not going to oppose it, like maybe they offer a little something towards, these were a few elementary schools that I know of. And the principals, basically, anywhere they're going to get money from, I don't know at what point principals say, no, we're turning that down. But Playa Vista is one that I was really concerned about, them, I think.
And now there's a big center, right? Isn't that where that is? With
There's
theaters
now-
and
they've got-
restaurants.
There's a restaurant, there's, like a coffee bean and tea leaf, manicurist, Pinkberry, there's, what is it, like Pink Dot,
Yeah.
They've got
Dippin' Dots.
they've got a clinic now. No, it's actually Pink Dot,
Oh,
which
Pink
is a grocery thing where they'll
Oh.
deliver food to you. You just call and they'll deliver. They now have their own elementary school. And so that's another issue, of course, is that for other schools in the area, then that's taking away numbers, and it's also like being, going to be very selective, obviously, of who's going to be in that school. But, so I've kind of gone all over the place with this thing, but charter schools, I've been told, I knew a school that was actually called a magnet, and it really was a magnet, and then they decided, in addition to being a magnet, just to have, they said they were going to actually get a certain amount of money just for being a charter. So they are an LAUSD dependent charter, but their name says Magnet Charter. And they are completely LAUSD, but it was to get a little extra money
So
and to have a little...
Charter schools get a little bit more money than they're incentivized.
Right, but I guess my impression with a charter school, what I've been told, is you don't exactly have a principal, you have a CEO.
And that's what I was getting to
Yeah,
earlier.
it's
Right.
not really a principal, it's a CEO, and so they may get that extra money, but I guess LAUSD, there's certain things that are mandated that you must have, so you have to spend money on these things, whereas the charter school,
Can
their
reallocate
thing
differently.
is, what can we squeeze, what can we eliminate, and it's a business.
Right.
In fact, I was thinking about something else. LAUSD has policies and protocols and procedures for pretty much everything. So I had read this article one time, and this was about the German immersion school. This was before I was there. But there was an article, and they said that somebody on the campus of the German immersion school had found a syringe. And they didn't know what to do with it, so they threw it away or something. And the thing is, if it had been an LAUSD, now okay, let's just say we're all human. An LAUSD person could have found
Thrown
it
it
and just
too.
thrown it away.
Right.
But it was like, I believe it was brought to the attention of the administrator, and they didn't know what to do, so they just tossed it. Whereas in LAUSD, and again, an administrator could still go, I don't know, let's toss it. Or they can call, but there would be a policy, there would be a procedure about this syringe or anything that could be a safety issue. And so that was something that troubled me, and again, with the German immersion program, we called them the little blonde ones. There were a few people of color there, a few. But really, it was something that was, a certain persuasion would probably be interested in that school. Now, I'd like to throw in, and it may not answer your question, but I just want to throw in something else about charter school. That I belong to a Unitarian church in sort of in the Mid-Wilshire area, and there was a point where we had some organization came and wanted to rent space for like a preschool kind of thing, and then eventually it morphed into a charter school, and it was a charter school for all students who were like, their parents were Central American, and they came and talked to us about their program, and what they were saying was, well, when these kids, they go to school and they don't learn about, Central American stuff. They don't learn Central American songs. They're learning English. Their parents can't communicate with them. So they were saying, so the benefit of this charter school is that the kids, are learning Central American stuff. And, and I thought, well, that's great, except
that they're not in Central
are
America.
you going to be learning, are you really able to teach them what they really need to learn beyond what's comfortable for the parents and, familiar?
Right.
Okay, well, okay, I have a little problem with that because we had, I don't know if we still do or not, students that would be in the bilingual or ESL program for many years, 5, 6 years or whatever. And that's what this reminds me of. And what you're doing to those kids is really abominable. You are not allowing to have those kids learn English. That's where they're going to compete with other students, other people that learn this. You want them to learn to continue with their culture, with their language, with their songs. That's fine. Do what the Chinese do. They send their kids to a Chinese private school
Or Saturday school.
Yeah, a Saturday school
Right.
where they
Korean.
learn and their language, their custom, whatever it is that they learn.
And the Jewish kids too. They
Yes.
go to Hebrew school, right?
Yes. And
Well,
so you
well,
can preserve.
or you go
I'm not
beyond
saying you
that,
cannot
yeah.
preserve your culture. Do preserve your culture because that's really great. But what purpose do you have?
Okay, but I don't even know if ESL, thought there really is a limit. And I don't even know if ESL totally exists anymore.
It may
Like
be
an
called
official
something.
ESL
Well, I don't know if it's called ESL anymore. I'm
or
using
English
that.
learner.
Yeah, for
Wasn't
English
there,
learners.
wasn't there a
learners.
time in the 90s when Pete Wilson pushed something forward that removed ESL?
By the way, BB,
It
I
was
just
the
saw a
bilingual
cop. Is it
education.
safe to be
Yeah.
parked over by the fire hydrant?
Wasn't there something that
It's
happened in
right
the
over
90s
the
where you
end.
pulled it and it wasn't going on at
I
all
think
for
so.
a while?
I mean,
It went, I'm not
parking
exactly
space,
sure
right?
if he's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
one or
I
not,
would wonder.
but there was the ESL or the bilingual program for a number of years.
Well, they
And-
still have it at Magnolia.
Okay.
Yeah, but wasn't it interrupted for a year or two?
Yes,
Where like it
yes,
couldn't,
and then
it
they
wasn't
said-
being taught?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I don't
I,
remember.
there, it was, there was. But that department, the bilingual department, had the most, everybody else was jealous of them, because in the school where I taught, they had the most money. I mean, it was
So this is
thousands and thousands, even millions of money.
$5,000 more a year.
Yeah,
English learner.
and it was
yeah.
just simply dumped in there. And
So there's,
what was the incentive of getting these kids out of there?
Yeah.
None. There was
Well,
no
and
incentive.
I think also these descriptions of these charter schools that are based on retaining a culture, like the German immersion and this one, I think that sounds like the clearest examples that these are actually private schools taking public funds.
They are.
and yeah, and then I get concerned about when you have schools where it's maybe Muslim, but it's a charter school. I mean, I've heard of that.
I didn't think
I
we could
don't
do
know.
that. I mean, Catholics can't
It's-
do that. That I know of.
But it's not, it wouldn't be called a Muslim school, it would be something else, but it happens to have, you
But
know,
wouldn't they have to have the same classes as every other school?
well, I'm just thinking about the fact that they're,
Well, again, they can skew the curriculum.
Right, if they're able to design their own curriculum, so long as they put it from an academic perspective rather than a religious perspective, they could probably do it.
what was that charter school that I think just got, was in the news in the last year, where they were saying that, I don't know, the head of the school was importing teachers from, I don't know if it was Turkey, where these people, Turkey's on my mind right now because
In
of
the
the
past,
election.
okay.
But they,
I think I did hear something about that because of it was getting connected to the whole Michael Flynn stuff, right? There was some sort of professor that was living in the States and starting schools.
I'm not sure, right now I can't.
LAUSD,
Yeah.
okay, for, as far as the teachers are concerned, okay, for a number of years, I guess, somehow or other, there were not
Now I
enough
do need-
teachers.
Oh, okay.
And
Do we
so-
want to take a short break and have
Yeah.
apple strudel for a
Yes.
second? I'm sorry to interrupt your thought.
And there's more stuff?
Yeah, there's apple strudel. Please have some.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to pause the recorder so everybody can just relax for a minute
Get up for a minute.
because we have gone an hour and 23 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
One other thing about the charter school movement, in my humble opinion, is it is also like there are people who really want to have, what is it, they feel that they should get some kind of certificate or something to be able to pay for private school.
Yes.
What is that called?
Vouchers.
Vouchers. And so the people, at least in my neighborhood that I've talked to, these are the people who probably could afford to put their kids in private school. And so they would be like totally pro voucher, but instead they're doing the charter school because it's like, you know, they're not having to pay for it, but it is essentially for them. They are keeping their kids away from, as much as possible, the kids that
Well,
they don't like, that they don't
we were
want.
that kind of people.
So-
I mean, we had 3 kids. We could have paid, and we did pay for them to go to their Catholic school.
Mhm.
I wouldn't send them to a charter. We wanted them to be Catholic oriented. So.
However, the government would not, and as a
Give
matter of
us
fact,
anything.
it still doesn't, give a voucher if you're going to a parent, if you're going to send your kid to a religious school.
Religious school.
Well, when and since they were in school.
But they would to a
To
charter.
a charter school.
When we
No,
were in
it's not-
Downey, you know, and
All against our
the school that our kids were in,
founding
come summer,
fathers.
we wanted them to get this enrichment class that they were offering through the Downey Unified School District. I went in and says,
Thank
oh, we
you.
can't do that because your kids are going to a Catholic school. I said, but they're not going during summer. They said, oh, no, that's only for the people who go to LAU, you know.
It was good
I
to
said,
see
that's
you.
not
See
right.
you, and
I
we'll
don't
see
think
you
that was
again.
right.
Yes.
Okay.
And thank you again, and so nice to meet both of
Nice
you.
to meet you,
Yes, so now
And
she
hang
brought me
on.
home and I can-
go to sleep.
I won't. I
Summer
won't go to
school
sleep.
has also changed
But
tremendously.
I-
Yeah.
energy left
It's
over.
very limited
Very low. with
Get it
me.
back
as to
again.
who can even go to summer school. It's not an automatic thing.
I guess it wasn't back then either. I couldn't believe it. I thought, I'm paying my taxes to the
Do
city.
you want me to turn it off now?
Why am I not in it?
Oh, I don't
You
care.
can turn it off now.
Okay.